Wednesday, October 30th, 2024, executive session of the Clarksville City Council. For those who are tuning in by television, I am not alone over here. I do have council members on the wings over there. First item on our agenda is the Planning Commission report. Mr. Tyndall?
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. Glad to be home for you all, I'm sure.
Very much so. The first item is item A, ordinance 24, 2024-25.
No. I bet it sat too long.
You got a permit?
Well, if, did I do that? There we go. Nope. Okay. I'll just wink at you. All right. This case is a little familiar to you all. This was heard last month at the City Council. This is the application of Marvin Curtis Merrill. It's 0.59 acres. Last month it came to you for R2D for duplexes. I believe Mr. Merrill at the time during the public hearing made mention of single family homes and there was some confusion. You remanded it back to the Planning Commission. We did have a chance to speak with Mr. Merrill several times, asked him what he was really going to intend to do. He said single family houses. So R2A is the request now for 2 single family lots on this application. This parcel fronts land on the south frontage of Old Trenton Road, approximately 1,370 feet west of Wilma Rudolph Boulevard. It is not an extension of any R2 in the area. The description of the property is a relatively level single-family home site with some mature trees. Next slide. The applicant's statement is we purchased a dilapidated single-family home that we would like to demolish and construct 2 single-family homes. Next slide. And there's the zoning. You can see there's R2 directly to the next to it, and those lots are just a few feet wider than the R2A lots. There's 2 homes on those, and the rest is R1 in the region with single-family homes. Let's try that. No. It's going to be a long night. Do you have a mouse? I'll just do that. Whoa. Okay, we'll work with that. There's the existing house on the property to be demolished and 2 single-family homes put in its place. And across the street, down Old Trenton Road. Department comments and concerns. The street department listed that 5-foot sidewalk would be required. And there were no other department comments or concerns. The school system noted their capacities at Glen Ellen, Kenwood, and Kenwood High School. Total units would be 2. Historical estimates would be 2 units. Staff does recommend approval. This request is consistent with the overall goals of the comprehensive plan. The general land use goals recommend we promote increased residential density in close proximity to major roads, existing jobs, and commercial nodes. The future land use opinion map indicates that the future land use of this property should be suburban neighborhood, and mild residential density increases are appropriate in this future land use as you transition away from commercial corridors such as Wilma Rudolph Boulevard to the east. And no adverse environmental issues were identified. The Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Any comment or question regarding ordinance 24, item A? All right, we're ready for item B, ordinance 34, 24-25.
All right, we're in business now. All right, this is the application of Austin P. the Fourth, or the estate of Austin P. the Fourth. 1.33 acres, currently zoned R1 single-family residential and requesting to go to C5 Highway and Commercial Arterial District. This property is at the southeast corner of Cumberland Drive and Southern Parkway intersection. It's a triangular-shaped wooded tract of land that is constrained by some floodplain. This is in Council Ward number 7. The applicant's statement is speculative retail office development. And there's the application, there's the zoning map there. It is an extension of the C5 to the west. I do want to call your attention to this map. I did mention that there's a floodplain in the area. There is the floodplain that encumbers a good 40% of the property there. Obviously, it is developable, but through the site plan process, we would have to maintain that floodplain capacity on the site or work with the floodplain management of that area, which would be with the street department. It is located at the signal out there. You're looking at the property there on the right. And from Southern Parkway looking back, 4813 is on the other side of that tree line. Across the street. And there's where the property begins on the right, where the tree line starts. The department said, street department said, the property must follow the access ordinance. Upon further development and review, this traffic assessment was required and submitted and accepted by the street department. No significant change in the level of service was determined, so no improvements are required. The proposed driveway on Southern Parkway would meet the access ordinance. In other words, all access at this time would have to be from Southern Parkway. If they wanted access from 4813, they'd have to go to the Access Appeals Board at the street department and request that. They did make mention of the FEMA flood zone impacts on the property, and there were no other comments or concerns listed. This is in the suburban neighborhood part of our comprehensive plan. The staff does recommend disapproval. This request is not consistent with the overall goals of the adopted comprehensive plan. The adopted future land use opinion map indicates the property should be part of a suburban neighborhood and has possible ecological or environmental constraints, and the C5 commercial zoning appears to be an intrusion into the residential character of the area to the south and east. Overall economic goals of the comprehensive plan state that over-concentration or saturation of commercial development should be avoided, and there are currently available lease spaces and vacant commercial zoning in close proximity to this site that are in more appropriate locations for commercial development. Environmental constraints exist on this property as referenced by the future land use opinion map and confirmed by the street department in the drainage comments that FEMA flood zone impacts a portion of the property. The staff recommends disapproval, and the planning commission also recommends disapproval.
Any comment or question? Councilperson Streven, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, I'll be honest. I mean, I was one of the ones that voted in favor of disapproval, but I was also torn at the time. Even when I made that vote, I'm still torn even at this time. I've got 1 week to make a decision one way or the other for sure. And part of my decision in that disapproval was exactly as listed in one of the reasons is, I mean, it seems pretty clean cut to be a residential area. However, we do have the commercial right across the street, right up the road. And knowing that if we could we put the one back up that shows the floodplain? I apologize. Oh, you have the clicker now.
I do.
With so much of that obviously being in the floodplain, would you really be able to put any homes there anyway?
Based on the size and where the floodplain is, you may be able to fit 2, possibly 3 homes if you divided it carefully there. R1 can go down to 12,000 square feet, and it is actually an acre and a third. But the lots out here you see are all acre plus lots.
But then, I mean, somebody's going to retain the land that is nothing but floodplain.
One property could, yes.
Okay, that still doesn't lean me for sure one way or another on it, but I did want to get that question answered, so thank you.
Councilperson Shekinah, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, this is R1. What is the closest residence to this property, the existing residence right now to this property? Do you know?
Oh, directly across the street to the east, and there's a property in between that's not developed, and then to the south there are some homes, as you can see, tucked outside, or one appears to be under the flood zone there.
Okay. Well, I'm glad the RPC recommended disapproval, because I would do the same thing. Adding a lot of concrete to that spot, that water's going to go somewhere. And I'd hate for some more residents to show up here saying they have a flood problem. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other comment or question? Seeing none, we're ready for item C, ordinance 35, 2024-25. Mr. Tindall.
And I will call the attention, there are 2 emails in your packet against the previous application. All right, Z37, 2024 is our next application. This is 0.55 acres, currently zoned M1 light industrial and requesting to go to C2 general commercial district. It is not an extension of the C2. The property is located off Ashland City Road. And it's an existing strip center commercial building. This is in Council Ward number 7. The applicant's statement is the building is more aligned with commercial uses. And here you can see it. So this is an area where there's a significant amount of M1 uses. There's some older uses that maybe don't follow M1 anymore, the gas stations, some of the former retail buildings that are out there. This is the former location of Lowe's before they moved in the 90s. A lot of warehouses and small maker spaces for craftsmen and home builders and things like that. There's the site. It does appear to be a strip center, office center building. Department comments and concerns. There really were no comments or concerns listed. The school system did list their capacities because C2 does allow for multifamily, but this would stay as a office use per the applicant. The real reason this is being requested for rezoning is they have a user that would like to come in there that can't be placed in M1, but it is allowed in C2. So it's to accommodate some of the office and commercial uses for C2. So this is in our commercial industrial hybrid part of our comprehensive plan. Pretty much everything in M1 on this map we listed as commercial and industrial hybrid, because honestly that's what this is. Very similar to areas like West Dunbar Cave off of Wilmer Rudolph, where you have a lot of different levels of industrial and commercial users all around each other. And we don't really have a commercial industrial hybrid zone yet. That's one of the things we're going to be looking at for our code rewrite is, do we let M1 have more commercial, or do we let C5 or C2 or something like that have more industrial, or do we come up with a new maybe CM zone and rezone these areas for that? So I will say that the use requested matches the area, but doesn't exactly match all the uses that you can have in that area. So the staff does recommend approval of this. The request is consistent with the overall goals and objectives, and the adopted future land use map indicates that this property is in a industrial commercial hybrid designation. The current city zoning ordinance does not align with the hybrid designation, so existing commercial structures more align with C2 than the existing M1. No adverse environmental issues were identified as part of this request, and the Planning Commission also recommends approval.
Thank you. Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, how many R4 units would be allowed on this property if it is rezoned to C2?
8 if they tore down that building and built it.
8 units? Because it's half an acre. Ish.
Right, it's 16 units per acre. It's right at a half, so it'd be 8.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comment or question? Seeing none, we're ready for item D. Ordinance 36, I believe, has been deferred at the Planning Commission level. So we will skip that one and go to item E, Ordinance 37, 2024-25. Mr. Tindall.
This is Planning Commission case Z39, Z37, Z39. Yes, Planning Commission Z39, 2024. Application of Byard and Mabry Holdings. Agent is Lawson Mabry and Chad Byard. This is 4.63 acres, and you are reading that right. It is currently zoned Ag, R1, R2, and R6, and is requesting to go to R5 and R6. And it's located off of Ringgold Road and Brentwood Circle intersection. The property is a rolling hills currently being row cropped with a tree line bonded on the north side of Ringgold Creek. This is in Council Ward number 3. The applicant's statement is fairly long, but their request it has several components that meet the future needs of the property. And I'll stop here. In your packet, you probably have a layout that may make it a little clearer than this map. So several years ago, the R6 and the R1, or R2, excuse me, were approved by City Council. And what has happened is the owner has purchased an additional tract of about an acre that has a mobile home on it that they're going to remove. And their intent now is to rezone where that mobile home was, which is where you see that little green triangle and the yellow below it, in the area just above it, to R5 to allow for exactly 36 townhouses. And then it also allows them to add about 3 R6 units by rounding out where the roadway would go with this new addition of the acreage to the subdivision that they've already have approval on. So we do have an approved plat on this already. This would just be adding that one parcel and adjusting the lot lines to accommodate that new parcel on the property. Here it is right now. It is not currently being developed. And there's Ringgold Road around where the entrance, it does have 2 entrances into that subdivision. And there's the current driveway to the property. Department comments and concerns. The street department stated that there's a blue line stream on the property, but outside the limits of the rezoning. Stream buffers may impact the site. Those were accommodated for in the subdivision. I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. Street department said an updated traffic study was required and the assessment was provided and meets the assessment for revisions to the zoning case, and they'll look after any additional recommendations at the site plan phase. No other comments or concerns were listed, and the school system listed their capacities of Ringgold Elementary, Kenwood Middle, Kenwood High School. Applicant's estimate is 43 total units. Historic estimates would be 46, so very in line with each other. This is in the Lafayette-Peters Mill planning area. It's a suburban neighborhood and mixed residential designation because it's such a large parcel. It actually crosses both of those in our land use plan. Staff does recommend approval. This request is consistent with the overall goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan. The zoning request aligns with the future land use designation of mixed residential and suburban neighborhood and provides a mixture of housing types such as owner-occupied townhomes, single-family detached structures with varying sizes to meet a diverse need of housing in the community. The request adjusts a small portion of a previously approved development plan. The updated overall development plan aligns with the overall housing goals of combining diverse housing options in a neighborhood design. And the street department will require the recommendation of roadway improvements at the construction phase of this project, and no adverse environmental issues were identified. The Planning Commission also recommends approval.
Thank you. Councilperson Shekina, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, this particular tract, you said 36 units plus 3 townhomes on the 4.63 acres.
Yes.
And I understand they already own some more of that area up there, and they haven't developed, but they're going to develop, right? Do we know how much they're going to develop, they're going to put on it?
There's an existing subdivision approved for the property, and if this map here is in your packet, it should be, that's the existing layout with them adding those 3 to 5 lots here and the townhome parcel in question here.
Okay.
So we have a previously approved subdivision plan on this property already. They just haven't started construction of it.
Okay, so the next question, yesterday at the RPC meeting, in the notes it said it had 28.97 acres of common area.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that part of that subdivision, that 28 acres?
Yes, it is, and again, I call your attention
That's
to
a
that
large
map.
common area.
Everything in green, now some of it's floodway, some of it is common area, is accommodated for the open space of that subdivision.
Okay, and do we know exactly what type of road work is going to be done?
There's some widening, turning lanes and decel lanes around this curve of Ringgold Road to accommodate their 2 driveways that was required with the previous submission. We don't think the additional 36 townhouses really tips the scale for any additional improvements. They're already going to do some pretty big improvements around that corner.
Okay. because that's a dangerous hot spot. All right, sounds good. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, do you know if there are any plans to connect to the Sarah Elizabeth Drive Street hub or stub when they develop out the other part of their development? I didn't see that on the plan, but I was just curious if,
Okay, I see where you're looking.
Yeah.
There is actually that area, that green line in between it is a potential future greenway for the city of Clarksville, and it sits very lower than Sarah Elizabeth Drive. So there is not going to be a connection between those two subdivisions in the future.
would the city need to initiate a abandonment for that hub, or would that be part of the greenway?
It does appear that there's a few homes off that stub road, so I don't think we'd abandon it at this time. It's just a small dead end right there.
Okay, but if it's not abandoned for future use, there's still potential that they could at some point in the future connect.
They'd have to cross the greenway and get the city's permission to do that.
Okay. And then, would you be willing to kind of describe what some of the improvements would be that would be potentially required for Ringgold Road? For those who drive Ringgold Road on a pretty regular basis, there's not a lot of room for widening, and there are a lot of what I would call dead man curves. When you pass guardrail after guardrail after guardrail, there are a lot of issues over there. So I'm just concerned because, like a previous council member mentioned, the other development, it looks like it's going to be a city within a city based on the plat review or the plat design that's there. So I'm just curious, what can we expect if this does get approval for road improvements?
Yes, good question. I'll tell you about it, and then I will also give you a sort of a similar real life example. If you're traveling north just past Ishii Drive, you'll begin to get a right turn lane off into the first entry. So it has two entryways so that residents can pick what they feel is the safer entry or to divide up the traffic to the different areas of the development. Now it's all internally connected off of Ringgold Road, but there's two entrances coming in. So the entrance past Ishii will have a right turn lane off and likely a left turn lane coming off from the westbound side or eastbound side. And then you get to the other entry, it'll be another turning lane and another left turn lane in. I can't speak to how much widening is going to happen between those driveways. I don't quite remember what the street department required there. I would compare this similar on Memorial Drive where right at Red Coat Run there where that development is, and they widened out to have a turn. This would be very similar to that, probably not as long, but at the entries it would widen out and provide left turn lanes and right turn lanes into this property.
Okay, so, thank you, but if I'm coming out of that new development and I'm looking to my left to see if it's clear, the line of sight is not very strong there. When people are coming, like you said, northbound on Ringgold Road past Ishii, so, that's one concern. Two, egresses is great, but that still could cause problems with sight distance, in that area because of that sharp curve.
Let me send you the plan from the subdivision. They're utilizing kind of an interesting entry exit that kind of turns you so you're at a better sight distance coming in and out. Let me send that to you, and that might clarify that a little bit.
Maybe everybody wants it, but thank you. Yeah, everybody.
I'll send it over.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Shekinah, you're recognized.
Yes, Mayor, I have a question for you.
All right.
Do we have a plan to widen Rossview or even just put some ease, Ringo? Yeah, I'm in Rossview. Ringo. Yeah, do we have a plan to, because I know next week we're probably going to have this place is probably going to be full, and that's going to probably be one of the questions.
Well, we do have a contract to extend sidewalk from Ringgold Elementary School. It stops down around the corner. I forget how far it goes, Mr. Smith. Pardon? The first bend as far as the first phase, but as far as road improvements, overall, no. It's kind of on a piece-by-piece, case-by-case basis where the developer wants to develop, so they would be responsible.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mayor.
Well, thank you. Any other comment or question? No, we're now ready for item F, Ordinance 38, 2024-25. Mr. Tindall.
Thank you, Mayor. This is Planning Commission case Z40, 2024. Application of MSM Capital LLC. This is 0.9 acres, just under an acre. Currently zoned R2 and requesting to go to R4. It is at the north of Needmore Road, West Teakwood Road, and Treeline Drive, and south and adjacent to Erie Drive. Some of you may remember there was a zoning case a little earlier to the west of this property, and we do have a site plan last month we approved for a townhouse development on the orange R4 piece just to the west of there. What has happened is that the applicant is looking to purchase this portion only, and I think it's important to note this is a small portion of a larger tract of land, so it's only 0.9 acres. The rest remains R2. You can kind of make it out here. It goes north and south, has a little connection to tree line, and then there's a draw or a stream between this and Erie to the back there. So they're all looking to rezone this, and if it rezones, they'll subdivide it and add it to the property to the west, allowing for approximately 15, 16 additional units on their already approved plan. This is in Council Ward number 11. The applicant did not make a statement, but everything I repeated was from the floor yesterday at the Planning Commission. Here it is off Treeland Drive. So it's a small flag lot starting where our sign is and going back. So it's further back in that property beyond where all the houses are. That really is not a good way to show you where that is in the center of that larger parcel. Department comments and concerns. The street department did mention a possible blue line stream on the property, but it's outside the limits of the rezoning, but stream buffers may be impacted during site plan. The school system did provide comments on their school systems of Oakland and Middle Northeast High School. Historical estimates would be 11 units. This is in the St. Bethlehem planning area. It's in the suburban neighborhood land use. Staff does recommend approval. The request is consistent with the overall goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan. This parcel is shown as part of the suburban neighborhood future land use map. While predominant use is moderate density single family residential in the future land use designation, this request is adjacent to a recently approved multifamily residential development and maintains a natural buffer and a blue line stream to the east between that and the adjacent residential subdivision. The blue line stream is on the property, but outside the rezoning request, and the required stream buffers will be reviewed at the site plan phase. The Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Councilperson Shekinah, be recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tindall, this blue line stream, can it flood, or do we have a?
There is no localized FEMA flood plain on this property. It's just calling out that it's a blue line stream, which means it's a state recognized stream on the property.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comment or question regarding this case? We're now ready for item G, Ordinance 39, 2024-25. Mr. Tindall, please, sir.
This next application is Planning Commission Case Z41, 2024. This is application of Exit 11 Properties. This is just shy of 20 acres at 19.89 acres. Currently zoned C4 and requesting to go to C5, Highway and Arterial Commercial District. As a reminder, C4 is Highway Interchange District. It is not an extension of C5. There is C5 in the general area of Exit 11. It's a tract of land fronting the southwest frontage of Hornbuckle Road, approximately 750 feet northwest of Highway 76 intersection. This is in Council Ward number 10, and it's in the Sango planning area. The applicant's statement is, the subject property is currently under a purchase and sales agreement. The intended use for the buyer is a John Deere dealership. The dealership will not be the dealership will not be open on weekends and has proposed operating times ending at 5 p.m. on the weekdays. There's an estimated 35 people that will be employed at the location, and the budget for the project is estimated at $45 million. The proposed use should have little impact on the adjacent tracts. This property was zoned to C4 in 1977. and there's the zoning map. So the blue you see on this, more the middle blue, is C4. You have some C2 to the north and the east, and then that dark blue just across the street is C5. And here's the property. I'll call your attention to the power lines overhead, both near and especially the ones on the far side. Those are TVA power lines that were installed after the purchase of this property by the individuals, and it does encumber a significant portion of the property. You can kind of see the towers out there in the distance. Department comments and concerns. The street department said improvements to Hornbuckle may be required at further development of the property, including the intersection with Highway 76. And there were no other comments or concerns. We did get this is rare, but TVA did make a statement and said transmission line easement is at this location. It is 175 feet, 87.5 feet to either side of the center line, which is presently not shown on the zoning plat. No structures may be built anywhere within the easement. Any crossings or uses under the easement, such as roads, parking, or utilities, needs to be submitted for review through the TVA's right-of-way use program application. The planning staff does recommend disapproval. The request is not consistent with the goals of the comprehensive plan. The correct zoning remains C4 Highway Interchange Zoning District. The availability of C4 Highway Interchange District is limited to the areas of the interstate exits, and it is not encouraged to reduce the stock of C4 zoning for the immediate and future needs of C4 in this interchange. No adverse environmental issues were identified as part of this request. The Planning Commission does recommend approval, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Of course, as he mentioned, this is in Ward 10. Mr. Tyndall, similar to what I asked you in the Regional Planning Commission meeting, being as this is going from C4 to C5, what, couldn't most of what can go in C4 also go in C5?
That's a correct statement.
And the reason I'm asking that question is because, and this is more for the council, is because one of the reasons listed is the need to retain our C4 properties for keeping them near the interstate. And I mean, just to be fair, one of the things that was mentioned is that there are limits on how many stories can go in the C5. So in C5, if somebody wanted to build a hotel versus if they built it in C4, they could only have a 2-story hotel in a C5.
That's correct.
Okay. And the reasoning behind wanting to keep it C4 is because, and you listed some of the types of businesses that you felt would be better in the area.
Yes, so it's not so much that what can happen in C4 can happen in C5. It's that C5 adds a lot more uses that are typically not the type of uses you see off in interstate. Things like hairdressers, dog groomers, different types of retail, some kind of offices that you don't need exactly right near the interstate. The Planning Commission staff has long tried to keep the C4 intact, but we understand the request here with the applicant.
Well, and this is, again, speaking to the council, I'm in favor of this, listening to the presentation, and I understand that anytime we make a decision, we're making a decision on the zoning, not what's going there, but I believe the same people that spoke at the Regional Planning Commission will be here to speak to us at the council meeting as well. It was a very good presentation they gave as each of them talked. I believe there's already a contract in place for them to come here, and there's a lot of value add as far as for the area, the ward, in one mentioning not open on nights or weekends, so that's allowing it to be something, not being a hotel that could add traffic at all times of the day versus not interrupting the neighborhoods that are going to be, that live over there. So it's a kind of a least intrusive on them in that way. Also, the fact that they talked about anywhere from creating 35 to 50 jobs, and this is includes because they said this would be a regional office, so it would have some corporate jobs. So you're talking about white collar jobs. I know that's something that those out in the Ward 10 area have talked about, the need for more white collar jobs here. Also, they would be having people that work on this equipment. This is the very large construction equipment that they would be dealing with. I was also impressed with the company that is talking about building it there and their involvement in the community. The first factor for me, even before they presented, though, was the fact that this is something that would not be so detrimental to that neighborhood over there. So I will be voting in favor of this one.
Mr. Tyndall, across the street, across Hornbuckle Road, is that where the state is building the new driver's license testing center?
That is correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, any more comment or question? We're now ready for item H, ordinance 27, 2024, 25. Mr. Tyndall, please, sir.
All right, this was an application that was before you last month, and there was a bit of an error in a sub-meeting, so we just had to go back and redo a hearing at the Planning Commission, and it's back before you for your consideration this time. This is actually an application of the city of Clarksville. I think only 3 of you at the time may have been here at the time when this started. This is for the extension of the Highway 76 connector overlay, which would be mirroring the Madison Street overlay district to the south on Madison Street, which does run the entire length of Madison Street from downtown around Pageant Lane to the city limits at Harper Road. The city council passed a resolution, and let me get the number here. 32, 2019-20 on December 5th, 2019. The city council did pass a resolution requesting the planning commission to study and return an ordinance pertaining to extending some sort of a design overlay down MLK to the interstate. As we all know, what happened after December of 2019, COVID really shelled a lot of stuff at a lot of offices through 2020 and 21. We also, around 21, 22, started work on our comprehensive plan, and I will apologize to the sponsor that this did get on the shelf and sat there too long. We did hold a public meeting on August 22nd, 24, at the Crow Rec Center. We did send a letter to every one of the property owners you see highlighted on this map, and we did advertise that meeting and had a pretty decent turnout of about 40 individuals, maybe 45, to learn more about what this would be. So again, understanding of the objective is to create a design overlay for our Highway 76, and the easiest way to accomplish this, staff felt, was to take what is considered the residential and the highway sub-districts of the Madison Street overlay and just extend the same rules up Highway 76 on the subject properties you see here, all of which front on Highway 76. This does not affect the base zoning, the landscaping, or the parking. That base zoning still tells the properties what they can do. This really deals with materials, signage, and any demolition of historic or considered historic structures, or any new construction would have to go to the Common Design Review Board. Typical maintenance or smaller additions would be handled at staff level. So the big items in this overlay would be, again, the high quality materials and signage regulations that you see along the Madison Street Highway District, which encompasses areas such as the Walmart that's out there on Madison Street, again, all the way to the city limits from there on out. The 76 corridor has had a great deal of growth over the last 4+ years since this was voted on by the city council. And design regulations are often most effective in areas just before they develop or as they're redeveloping, which was the original goal of the Madison Street corridor after the hospital was relocated. I need to correct this slide, but the Land Advisory Committee re-met this past Friday morning, and they did not provide a recommendation this time. I apologize, I didn't get this slide updated, but they did not provide any comments or recommendation this time. The Common Design Review Board did recommend against it. The planning staff recommends against it. The Planning Commission did recommend for approval, and I'll just read the Planning Commission staff's reasoning here. Since the overlay applies to new construction and redevelopment coupled with the growth of the Highway 76 corridor over the past 4+ years, the overlay's impact would be minimal. The growth along the 76 corridor has been of a nature that would meet or exceed the overlay regulations if they were imposed. Signage would be the most impacted along the corridor. And I'll leave off that last recommendation, but I will say RPC staff would be further stretched with the expansion of the corridor. I don't want to speak for the code department. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Councilperson Streetman, you were the sponsor way back in the day. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, sir, about half a decade ago. First question I actually have, and maybe I missed this in the RPC meeting, but did you say the Land Development Advisory Committee did not make a recommendation this time?
They did not make a recommendation or make any recommendations to change anything in it at this time.
Okay, so what was the vote then, I guess, on?
They did not take a vote. We asked if there was any additions or corrections, and there was none.
Okay.
So they left it as is.
Okay, yeah, I would really appreciate that getting updated so that we're not, because especially because we don't have them here, half the council here tonight to be able to hear that.
I can push that out.
Also, in regard to, I appreciate that you're not saying now about city code staff hours, because I'll ask them that question with them being here. Of course, that was information you gave to the Common Design Review Board that voted against it. I've watched the video. I know they were told the same thing in regard to the city code staff hours. One of the questions I asked you in the meeting the other day was in reference to how much time is currently spent by the Regional Planning Commission staff for the Madison Street overlay.
And I mentioned that depending on the application, it can take a little bit of time or a longer time. We receive about 50 applications a year on the Madison Street corridor.
So
about one a week.
About one a week. Any idea of time?
It depends if it's a new construction or just a sign update or a materials update. So some of them can take just 2 or 3 hours. Some can take several days to notify people, get it on the agenda, handle the the Common Design Review Board. So it really depends what those applications are. We don't record individual hours per application that comes in.
You mentioned the same person that handles that also handles the historic overlay?
That's correct.
Being as that the Regional Planning Commission, as one of the reasons for the recommendation against this is because it would add additional hours. However, we have, you just brought to us for the Regional Planning Commission staff to look at extending the historical overlay. Are you in favor of extending the historical overlay?
Well, it's a little premature to talk about that. Those properties are already in the downtown overlay, so they are still subject to that person's purview. It would just put it into the historic section. You'll see that in a couple months.
It wouldn't change anything for what they have to do with that?
Probably a little more rigor in the analysis, working with archives to learn more about those properties when they come up for applications than we would say in the downtown urban design overlay district. But there are those properties that you're speaking of are already in an overlay.
But it would still add.
It could. Yeah.
It could still add, and just kind of putting out the difference there of this, that RPC is in favor, potentially in favor as bringing it forward to look at. Also, in regard to, I lost one of the things where I was going with that. We've got coming down the pipeline a potential sign ordinance to look at that would be citywide. And of course, that's coming from the RPC as a recommendation. Do you feel that would add to the?
That would add more to the code department's needs than ours. They review individual signs.
But you still feel that's something that would be beneficial to the community, which is why you're
Absolutely.
looking at it? Okay, just like I said, pointing out kind of the differences there. And then you talked about the public meeting, 40 to 45. I think you even mentioned in one of the previous meetings that, that's a pretty large turnout when you have something, for a small area. Did you have any negative feedback at all?
We did not
At the
receive
meeting.
at that meeting any negative feedback. There was no negative feedback.
Okay, I knew, I was there, the council person for Ward 1 was there. Everybody seemed, if they didn't, either had questions or seemed very positive about it
I agree.
in regard to having it. Okay, sorry, I have additional questions, just trying to remember everything that I've got. I also have some questions that I would like to, if possible, Mayor, I would like to ask the City Codes Department, since they're being referenced on here.
Okay. Mr. Crosby, your name was called, or your department name was called. If you wouldn't mind, Councilperson Streetman, ask him the question.
I was hoping she was calling me for one of those cupcakes I saw going around.
We do have some over here.
Okay, maybe after.
There's no bearing on your answer, though. If you'll pull that mic up closer to you.
Mr. Crosby, you're referenced in here, and again, I know he stated that he didn't need to speak for the codes department, but of course it was referenced in the Regional Planning Commission both times. We talked about it, it was referenced in the Common Design Review Board, that it would stretch your department further. But I know you and I talked, I don't want to try and put words in your mouth, so I'll kind of let you address that if you don't mind.
I kind of look at it two different ways. Does it add more work? Yes. Does it add stress to the department? We're already stressed. So I would say no. So is it a hardship? It's not a hardship. Is it more work? Anything we do creates a little more work. So I don't see it being a hardship.
Well, I know one of the things you had mentioned to me is that the employee that currently does the 76 area is also the employee that handles Madison Street. So they're already going to be familiar with the overlay process. Is that
Yes.
correct in my
It wouldn't be new to
understanding?
them. One benefit of adding some more, I guess, on their plate, we're also taking some off their plate. I know we worked with the mayor during the budget time to add staff to our department. We've taken some of the responsibilities that belong to that person and removed them and put them in a different position in the department.
Can you talk a little bit about how much, I mean, because we already have an example to be able to use with the Madison Street overlay. Can you talk any about the workload or the process maybe that's on your department for that?
Yes, so we do our best and attempt to attend all the meetings. That way we're somewhat familiar with. A lot of the things that go to that board don't require a building permit. So the only way to check on that is to have staff at the meeting to verify that, painting, roof things, exterior remodels that wouldn't necessarily require a building permit. If we see those things going on, it's nice to have an upper hand of being at the meeting, seeing what's voted on, making sure that we know what's going on. That way when we see it, we know, has it been approved? Maybe it hasn't, and we can stop them and get them in front of the board for approval. So some of the things that we do don't necessarily have a permit, so it's important for us to be involved as they're asking for those approvals to know what's going on.
Okay. Thank you. Mayor, and I think the world of Mr. Crosby here, but would it be okay if I also spoke with Mr. Smith as the former to get, he can speak to the present and Mr. Smith could speak to the past a little bit?
Okay, Mr. Smith, if you really want to subject us to
If-
that.
If
You don't want
not,
a cupcake.
I don't want to extend the meeting too long either.
Okay.
Do what?
Mr. Smith, your name was called.
And the cupcakes.
Councilperson Streetman, you're
Cupcake.
recognized.
He asked first, so they're for him. That's fair. Mr. Smith, I think Mr. Crosby did a great job talking about kind of what they're dealing with in the present. You dealt with it for several years.
Sure.
A lot of development happened over those several years along Madison Street. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with that process and
Sure.
for the department?
Yeah, so I think commonly, the codes enforcement employee that goes to those meetings, say 2 to 3, maybe 4 cases is the average per month, which lines with what Mr. Tyndall said, but that they cancel those meetings often because they have nothing on the agenda. So I don't know how cumbersome, it was never really cumbersome for that employee. Some of those cases, I know Mr. Tyndall mentioned kind of a spectrum of time. Sometimes it's a swap of a sign, it's a color scheme, and it's a few minutes of, from a codes enforcement perspective, that employee attends the meeting, he knows what was approved, he sees that was installed, and it's just he drove past it and saw it, so it really doesn't add a lot of load.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Mr.
You're
Smith.
welcome. Thank you.
And Mayor, I do have one more question for Mr. Tyndall.
Okay. Back to you, Mr. Tyndall.
This question, I apologize, I have two more questions. This question is in regard to the development. You know, it was listed that you feel it would have a minimal impact at this point because we are 5 years past where we first asked for it. But I know one of the questions that the regional planning, one of my fellow commissioners asked was in regard, and I in turn asked it at the meeting, but Madison Street, when this was put into place, I mean, it was, you know, it was developed as much, if not more, than Martin Luther King at this point. And yet we've continued to see this have an impact on that.
I don't know where the question is in there as much, but
Do you
the Madison
believe we
Street was put,
continue?
when the hospital was being removed, the fear, and I'll use that lightly, was that with the potential new growth that would come with the redevelopment of the hospital site could spill out to other areas of Madison Street. The city council at the time felt it wise to put an overlay in to regulate the look and feel of the new development. So it wasn't maybe all the way down to Harper at the time, but it encompassed all of Madison Street when it was implemented, but mostly due to the redevelopment potentials out there, maybe not the new development like you see more on the Highway 76 corridor.
But again, I mean, it has not, I mean, hampered. We've continued to see stuff come along there on Madison Street.
I've had mixed feelings on whether it's hampered. I've heard from some landowners that says they have lost some deals due to some of the regulations, but there has continued to be development along Madison Street regardless.
I know we've also, I mean, we've got right there at the corner of 76 and Madison where Ultra, they've tore down Captain D's, or, well, I can say it, it's not open anymore, and I shouldn't have said the bank name, but there's a bank that has tore down a business that was there to be able to build a new location. So, I mean, I think that's where you see the impact would come for that. And also, you mentioned in one of the meetings that there have been other council members that have been interested in having overlays in their areas as well.
There have been discussions, not from the floor here, but side discussions with and without the code department about other potential overlays around the city.
And I think one reason you listed in the Regional Planning Commission meeting was that you felt that this was something that should be citywide. And I know that it was questioned by another commissioner that, well, even if we do believe that, because you projected that process to take at least 18 months, that it shouldn't stop us from being able to move forward now, especially based on part of the reasoning being that the development that's happened in the last 4.5 years. Is that correct?
The feeling of staff is that it's this corridor and then it'll be the next corridor. So at some point, the design standards should be citywide and applied to all areas and not just one area specifically more than another.
Didn't you, though, previously say in the Regional Planning Commission meeting that you thought maybe it should be something that's considered as part of the zoning rewrite?
It could be. You know, we'll definitely march through that, and we
I'm
have
just
some
saying
we have
that-
some proven success in Madison Street, so we could make some changes and potentially make that a citywide regulation.
But you do admit we've had some proven success in Madison Street?
Some, yeah.
Okay, just checking. Appreciate that. But, okay, that concludes my questions. I do have comments I want to make, but I'd rather allow others to be able to, there's another light flashing, and I think somebody gave up as well, but, sorry. But I'll speak again in a minute if that's okay, and allow others to talk.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yes, we're talking about staffing and the ability to, take on extra work. I'd like to know, we've had historic growth. What has been your staff increase as we've grown?
Since I took over at the Planning Commission March 2018, we've added 2 staff members, a long-range planner and an addressing technician.
Do you
We've
know-
also
I'm sorry.
kind of spread some other duties around to some other people as well to make a better cross-trained staff.
But do you know, like, if you compared your staffing to a similar size city, are you comparable? Are you smaller?
I did a study in 2018 for budget time where we did get the long-range planner added. that is a difficult thing to study because different planning commissions in different cities do different things. Some are in charge of code enforcement, some maybe do economic development. So you have to compare not just size, but per capita. At the time I determined we were 1 or 2 planners low, and we've, I believe, caught up, and we're doing good work.
Oh, I guess I should say I feel like you don't have enough people. Like I feel like we should not be not extending things because we don't think we have enough people to do the work. I feel like many of our city departments are truly understaffed, and they haven't grown with the exponentially as our community and actually their job and requirement has grown. And I would like to ask the same question about to building a codes when we're done. So if I didn't make that clear, I apologize. That was my intent.
I don't want, and I feel like the staff resources is being overstated as a reason. There are other reasons we were not exactly in favor of this, but I don't want to make sure that the staff resources we can handle if this is done without additional employees. We will just have to shift some resources internally, maybe take one thing off of someone else's plate, put it on another. We do have the ability to do that. So
Okay.
I want to make sure this isn't too overstated.
All right. I would like to ask Mr. Crosby the same question, if that's okay.
Mr. Crosby, you'll get your cupcake one way or the other.
That's right.
All right, Councilperson Reynolds.
Thank you. Hey, Mr. Crosby, we've talked a couple times, like, my concern is, again, that your responsibilities as a department have grown, but your staff hasn't really kept up with the expansion as our city has grown.
Sure.
And I was just wanting, as we talked about not being able to do things because of staffing, I just, how many do you know in the last 10 years, how many people you've added, and do you know what that looks like in another community? Similar.
I don't have numbers. In the last 10 years, we certainly haven't added staff to the same plane that we've grown on as far as our community. However, we are able to add staff seen at a or a good enough rate to keep up. We can, as Mr. Tyndall said, spread duties around, take things off of the plate of one and put it on another that maybe is more well equipped to take care of it. Other cities our size, I think it's hard to make the comparison. To echo what he said, every department is so different. You know, the planning commission in our city and county doesn't do what the planning commission in any other city and county does. There's nothing that I know of that really mirrors one county and the other that's got any kind of similarity. Some of the fire departments and building and codes offices are together. You don't see that here. So it's really hard to compare to another city and county, even if it is equal size.
We did add 3 positions to his department this fiscal year.
We did. And
Well, I appreciate the work you do. This is not an intent to say that, you know, that I don't think you're doing enough work. I hear as a city council person, you saying that this is extra work and I'm not sure we can, and that concerns me, like if we're going to, and, you know, build a better city,
Sure.
we need to make sure that our staff is staffed enough to support that. So,
and we have a good staff. Fortunately, our folks are the best of the best, and we're grateful to have them, and we do a lot with a little, and that is simply due to the folks that we have. So we're grateful to have additional people, but we're very lucky for the ones that we do have. So thank you.
Councilperson Reynolds. Okay. Councilperson Streetman.
Thank you. And I do have one more question for you, Mr. Tyndall. And I know that you have heard from a couple of the property owners along there that aren't in favor of this. But I can say I've actually heard from one of the property owners along there that owns a business in that property, you know, on that stretch that would be affected by this. And they absolutely see nothing wrong with it. They feel like this is the corridor to our community. This is the entrance point. It's the front step. I mean, do you feel that, I mean, that's actually true? That is, I mean, one of the main entrances to our community?
Yes, and I will say the comprehensive plan identifies each of our interstate exit areas as a corridor potential, as an entry point to the community.
Well, and that would be my question, and then my comments would be that I did speak, like I said, with one of the business owners along there, and he saw nothing wrong with us, having that bar higher. Because, and actually, I guess this would be a question. One of the comments was, that you've made is that you feel as though people along there have kind of been playing by the rules. Not completely. We know that. We can tell that from the difference in the sign size for one of the fast foods that's located there and one of them that's located on Madison Street. But I mean, would you agree that those places have also made an investment in ensuring that they are building quality and nice looking buildings out that way?
Though we've not evaluated them on a case-by-case basis, doing a cursory just drive-by or sitting in the parking lot, you can tell that for the most part, they're playing by the rules, high-quality materials, glass, signage is relatively reasonable.
But not everybody, and they don't have
That's
to.
correct.
It's not a rule, and I mean, to me, in one sense, this would be protecting their investment as well, so that everything else that is built along there is built to the, same quality standards that's been built, because I do believe, like I said, it's a corridor to the area.
You could look at it that way.
No, I absolutely do look at it that way. And this is also to the council. I've not only talked to the business owner along there, I've heard a lot from the community at large out in the Ward 10 area that have been in support of this on both sides of 76. So they've been hopeful that this would go through. Some have been waiting for this for quite a long time, and one of them will be here to speak next week to that as well. He's been quite the asset in helping me through this process. But I would ask that you support this. This has been long in the works. In regard to the individuals on the Regional Planning Commission that voted in favor of it, 3 of those that voted for approval or including myself, were on the council at the time this came forward. So it was nice to see that support continued forth from 5 years ago. I would ask that you do support this, and also if there are others that are interested in it, as Mr. Tyndall said, I would encourage you to start the process as well for your area. I know that one current council person that was not on the council during this time had reached out to the entire council when this one came forward, wanting to look at that area too, but probably thought they would wait until this finally came back around. But I would encourage you, if this is an interest of yours, to reach out to Mr. Tyndall and start the process as well. So thank you for your time. I know I took quite a bit of it asking questions. I'll try and keep it minimal for the rest of the evening.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Tyndall?
Just a quick point of information, because the council doesn't get a lot of zoning ordinance updates. Though the staff did recommend disapproval, we have presented you with a legally adoptable ordinance that does meet the intent of what was originally there. So if this does pass, and it is your decision to pass it, it does meet the intent of the original request.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Tyndall. We're now ready for the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, please read the consent agenda.
All items in this portion of the agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the council and may be approved by one motion. However, a member of the council may request that an item be removed for separate consideration under the appropriate committee report. Ordinance 114, 2023-24, second reading as amended. An ordinance amending Part 2, Code of Ordinances, Title 2, Alcoholic Beverages, Chapter 2, Intoxicating Liquor, Section 2-205, Restrictions on Liquor Stores, of the official code of the city of Clarksville relative to the number of retail liquor stores inside the city limits. Ordinance 18, 2024-25, second reading, an ordinance accepting the donation of real property from Montgomery County, Tennessee to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of a sewer line and lift station upgrade project. Ordinance 19, 2024-25, second reading, an ordinance accepting the donation of certain real property from John Mark Holloman and Robert D. Holloman to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of a sewer pump station. Ordinance 20, 2024-25, second reading, an ordinance amending Part 2, Code of Ordinances, Title 4, Building, Utility, and Housing Codes, Chapter 2, Building Codes of the City of Clarksville Official Code relative to non-residential building permits. Ordinance 21, 2024-25, second reading. An ordinance to amend the official code of the City of Clarksville, amending Title 4, Building, Utility, and Housing Codes, to create a new chapter, Chapter 11, relative to third-party services, and one section therein pertaining to third-party inspections and third-party examinations. Ordinance 23, 2024-25, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the City of Clarksville, application of Blackjack Investments LLC for zone change on a tract of land fronting on the northern frontage of Ashland City Road, 725 plus or minus feet west of the Ashland City Road and South Rosewood Drive intersection, from R1 Single Family Residential District to R4 Multiple Family Residential District. Ordinance 25, 2024-25, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the City of Clarksville, application of Mark Bullock for zone change on property fronting on the north frontage of West Rossview Road, 775 plus or minus feet west of the Wilma Rudolph Boulevard and West Rossview Road intersection, from R1 Single Family Residential District to R6 Single Family Residential District. Resolution 21, 2024-25, a resolution approving an appointment to the Housing Authority Board. Resolution 25, 2024-25, a resolution approving a retail liquor store certificate of compliance for operation of the Hideaway located at 4 Leland Drive, Clarksville, Tennessee, and the adoption of minutes from October 3rd, 2024.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilperson McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mayor. What's been passed out, it says, this is pertaining to the first item on the consent agenda pertaining to liquor stores. It says, Councilperson McLaughlin amendment to ordinance 114, 2023-24 as amended. So what I did was, based on the feedback from last month, what we did pass was changing the limit date effective July 1st to the maximum based on our census numbers from 2020. But there was a lot of discussion about including the language that Councilmember Marquis had in her amendment pertaining to distance. So with the help of Mr. Bittner, I've taken that and included that in an amendment that I'll present to you all next week. And then also the city clerk looked at the procedures for the lottery and application process. And the only change that she recommended was that there be an application fee. So that is also included in here. And the other addition is to make sure that the state legal language on weight per Mr. Bittner has also been added. So this is, the changes will be the clerk's fee, the distance restrictions from another liquor store, a place of worship, a park, and a school, and then also the weighting of the alcohol. So that's what I plan to present as an amendment to my amendment that passed last month, based on discussion from the previous meeting.
Thank you. Thank you for giving it to us in advance. Councilperson Zacharias, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I know that, after we voted on this last month, everybody was in complete agreement and good to go. So I do have a concern with the amendment, and that is, I see three separate issues here. There's the definition that I think is pretty non-controversial, and then there's everything else, which history has shown has been pretty controversial. I'm worried that enough people would have enough problem with enough of the amendment that we would still not get this definition updated, which we need to do. And I'm going to ask the sponsor if she would not be offended if I maybe talked to Mr. Bittner and maybe had this split into two separate amendments, one that just addressed the definition and then the other amendment with everything else.
I mean, that's fine by me, but I was being hopeful based on the conversation from the last month that everything that was spoke to was included, especially several people commented that if the distance language from Councilmember Marquis could be added, it would have been a perfect amendment. So you do you.
All right, so as a very wise command sergeant major once told me, I too am hopeful, but hope is not a method or a course of action. And I'm worried that if we rely on hope, we are going to disappoint ourselves. Thank you.
Councilperson Streetman on
Thank-
the proposed amendment or ordinance.
Thank you, sir. In regard to that, I would think, I mean, it's been wrong for a little while now. If this were to not pass through, which I'm hopeful that based on everything that we talked about a month ago and a month before that, I don't remember how many months now. But there's been a lot of work that's gone into this to get to a final product. If it doesn't go through, couldn't that be brought back the following month just as that? I would think that would be substantially different than just this. I don't know if that's a question for you, the mayor, Mr. Bittner.
It would be substantially different, but you were directing that toward the sponsor? You're
Whoever
back
wants
on.
to answer it.
I was just gonna ask Mr. Bittner, if this amendment failed for some reason, could he not bring a separate amendment forward at the same meeting to address? Okay, thank you.
Oh, even easier. Okay, and my second thing is I do wish I'd have thought about this sooner. But in regard to looking at section 2-205B, as far as effective July 20, the limit shall increase based on the maximum number allowed according to the most recent United States Census. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but my two questions along that line: when would we do the lottery for that? Since it would be effective July 1st and that limit would go up, does that mean July is when we would do the lottery for the increased amount, or could we actually do it then? Would it have to be later than that? Because would she be allowed to put out the notice and start collecting in advance of that? That's one question. And then,
Let her answer that one
Okay.
first, if you don't mind.
Nope, I don't
Councilperson
mind.
McLaughlin?
I'll just leave my microphone.
Okay, I
Okay,
will.
we'll pretend like we're at the planning commission. So it would be very similar to what the city clerk did this past July for the lottery process for the two that were added. So the lottery process doesn't change. She would still start the application process in advance of July 1st.
so it would be July when they would hold that. We don't need to put anything in there for that. What about then in the future? Because, and that was really what my question was, and then I went backwards in my mind to now. What about the next time? And I'm not saying that I'm opposed. I'm not trying to create any issue. I'm just trying to, it's something I just thought of while we were sitting here. When the next census comes out,
There's still the language in that section that speaks to that the number would change based on the certified census number.
Right.
So in 2030, based on population.
Right.
It could increase again. It would still be based on population, and that's why the city attorney, in section B wanted to strike the number that's there.
I agree, and I'm not stating that, but when would the lottery take place?
It would still be July 1st after the census numbers come in. We didn't get them in any speed this last time. I wouldn't imagine that they would be ready until a year or more later, so it would be July 1st again. That section of the process and procedures for the city clerk would remain the same.
Okay, and that part I got, I just didn't, the timing, that was all I was
Yeah,
really, do
July
we need
1st.
to have anything in regard to when afterwards, after the census numbers are released? Would it be the July after census numbers are released?
I'd be a little reticent to put a deadline in there, just
Okay,
kind of
and
let it,
it doesn't matter, we don't have to have it or anything.
okay.
I don't
If
think
we
any of us
don't,
will be here then.
I'm good.
Well, maybe.
It's not that far off, really. Okay, no, I mean, and again, I wasn't trying to be,
No, those are good
add
questions.
any
Yeah.
issues. It was just things I thought of, and this is executive session where we're supposed to discuss things.
Yeah, thank you. And also, I did bring this to the finance committee yesterday for a preview.
On Monday.
All my days are messed up. Is today Thursday? Okay, that concludes my report. Thank you, Mayor.
Right now, it's Wednesday. Okay. Anything else on the consent agenda? We're ready for the Finance Committee report. Chairperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Bear with me one moment. I got comfortable there for a second. Ordinance 29, 2024, 25, an ordinance to amend the official code of the city of Clarksville, Title 6, Finance and Taxation, Chapter 3, Privilege Taxes, Section 6-303, Privilege or Business Tax License Required, to amend terminology regarding the chief financial officer and create a new subsection relative to a fine imposed for failing to obtain required business license. The Finance Committee recommended approval.
Any comment or question regarding this ordinance? Chairperson Streetman.
Ordinance 30, 2024, 25, an ordinance for the donation of certain real property from the city of Clarksville, Tennessee to Montgomery County, Tennessee for the purpose of the State Route 237 Rossview Road Widening Improvements Project. The Finance Committee voted in favor of approval.
Any comment or question? Councilperson Streetman.
Ordinance 32, 2024, 25, first reading, an ordinance to amend the official code of the city of Clarksville, amending Title 12, Streets and Other Public Ways and Places, Chapter 7, Construction and Repair, to create a new section relative to an internal policy for developer contributions for new traffic signal installations. The Finance Committee voted in favor of approval.
Any comment or question? Seeing none, Chairperson Streetman.
Resolution 22, 2024, 25, a resolution authorizing an interlocal agreement between the City of Clarksville and Montgomery County pertaining to the division of 2024 Burn Justice Assistance Grant Fund allocations and the administration and use of such funds. The Finance Committee voted in favor of approval.
Comment or question? Seeing none, Chairperson Streetman.
Resolution 24, 2024, 25, resolution authorizing an interlocal agreement between the City of Clarksville and Montgomery County, Tennessee for utility relocation at State Route 237 Rossview Road from east of International Boulevard to east of Kirkwood Road. The Finance Committee voted in favor of approval.
Any comment or question regarding this resolution? Chairperson Streetman.
That concludes my report, Mayor.
Okay, Gas and Water Committee. The chairman will have a report next week. Neighborhood and Community Services Committee, Chairperson Shakina, be recognized.
Yes, Mayor, I have a full report next week.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Committee, Chairperson Zacharias.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have a full report next week.
Thank you. Public Safety Committee, Chairperson Lovato.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have a full report next week.
And the Transportation, Streets, and Garage Committee Chair will have a report next week. Yes, you're recognized.
A press release went out today announcing that our very own Veronica Williams, who is Operations Supervisor at Clarksville Transit System, was recognized by the Tennessee Public Transportation Association as an Urban Support Employee of the Year. So congratulations to Veronica and CTS.
Let's give Veronica a round of applause. While we're talking about awards, I was going to mention it under my comments, but Camille Thomas won not one but two Volunteer Year of the Year awards. The Tennessee Association of Public Purchasing and the East Tennessee Purchasing Association gave Camille Volunteer of the Year awards at their conference last week. So let's give Camille a round of applause. Okay, we're now ready for new business. Ordinance 33, 2024, 25, an ordinance amending Chapter 9 Theaters, Section 5-901 of the Clarksville City Code to delete and replace the provision regulating Sunday shows. Councilperson Little, you're the sponsor. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I just came across this when I was reading through our code and for the whole liquor stuff, and then I just saw this and it seemed a little dated, and to give back some of that control to the businesses, allow them to open for services to give their employees more hours, and then allow more opportunities for families to go out and enjoy certain things in the city. And then not only that, we also have a new movie theater that will be opening up in the mall. So this is something that can definitely help, everybody grow and kind of open up more services. That's all.
Any comment or question regarding this ordinance? All right, we're now ready for public comments. Our code allows 3 people to address the council in 5 minutes each. If you would, come to the well, give us your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Candace Payne. Of course, I own the property on Elbutter Drive. And although I appreciate the study that was recently presented, I do want to point out a few things. Number one, the presenter addressed the fact that or he stated that he had spoken to me. He's not spoken to me but one time. So please don't get up here and misrepresent our conversations. And in that one conversation, he was going to provide me information on the known history of my home, which I still to this date have not received. That would be much appreciated. I doubt I'll receive it from him at this point. The next thing I want to address is a few other things in the presentation. It almost acts as if the council or the city is trying to absolve ownership for anything that's happened in my neighborhood. Just because the property was built prior to it being adopted into the city limits, that doesn't absolve you from ownership in any situation. Again, I bought a property that I was not properly advised on. I'm pretty much stuck sitting on over $100,000 worth of debt that I can't get out of because, again, no one told me. If anybody needs to see documentation, I will gladly provide that. My appraisal advises nothing. My closing documents advise nothing. And again, now I'm sitting on a two-story home, 4-bedroom, 3-bath, and I can't do anything with it. I have over $100,000 in repair estimates. And again, all that presentation did last week was find ways to absolve the city from taking any responsibility. How is that fair to me as a taxpayer? I've been paying taxes on this same property. I've done all the renovations. I've done the proper coding. I had all the professionals work in my favor, and yet I'm still the one sitting with a house that's flooded. I can't fix it. There is no money to fix it. As I mentioned to you all, the insurance will not cover it because why? I didn't have flood insurance. I didn't have flood insurance because I didn't know there was an issue on my street. And if you all go back and look at the documents and the images that he provided in there, all of them show my house will flood again. How does one fix that? Other than sitting and hoping that the city will purchase the property to where it can't be built on. Because if I have to sell it, I'm pretty sure we can all make the assumption that someone's going to come in, demolish that property, and build 2 tall skinnies or whatever they can fit on that lot. And then you all will be in this exact same situation in a few years because it's going to flood again. So we're coming about all these different ways to try to remedy it. It was quite disappointing that someone on the body had to ask, what other means of funding have we looked into besides FEMA and TEMA? Which, Mr. Mayor, if you recall, I emailed you several times over the summer inquiring into that. And now here we sit. I don't qualify for that based off of that presentation. I've not owned the home long enough. So in order for me to qualify, I need to have dealt with 2 more instances. Who can wait 2 more instances? I've been in the house now for 5 months since it's been flooded. November 2nd is actually the anniversary date of when I closed on my home and purchased it. I was proud. I worked hard. I went through a lot that year to get this house, and now I'm stuck with it. That makes no sense. But we're trying to be a better city, and we're trying to promote progress, but we're neglecting the older, more established neighborhoods. That doesn't make sense, and it's not right. Again, my name is Candace Payne. I'm on Alberta Drive. Thank you.
Does any other citizen wish to address the council?
Hello, Mayor and Council.
Give us your name and you have 5 minutes.
I'm Billy Lane. I'm here to represent our community that David Smith represented about the city kind of inheriting the problem. But I've got document here that the city created that problem. So I brought a copy for everybody on the council, and everybody here.
If you'll give that to Lieutenant Gill, he will distribute that.
And if you notice on this document, it shows the date of purchase of the lot, and it shows the date, that effective date of when it took a final to, for it to be occupied. So that's really all that I got, but I will let you know that that dangerous approach that David Smith had spoke on about the pipe being punched across that street. To me, if you look at elevation and you look at the design that the street department did back 38 years ago, that was a very dangerous approach for the design of the natural flow of the water. And for me, whenever I look at this, and I've studied it with geologists, hydrologists, I've wasted so much effort for the city to come back with TEMA and FEMA. Me, I just finished my house, and I did get occupancy letter on Monday of last week because I felt like I needed to push forward because the project had been going on for 6 years. And 6 years of me pushing, I've got more pushback from the city than I actually did help. And then at that time, I also noticed that it put two neighbors at a divide, and me being a Christian, thou love thy neighbor. Me and my neighbor 4 months ago became to be more united at the corner of our property as it flooded, that we noticed that I was not putting the water on my neighbor, that I'd been screaming for help from the street department, building and codes, and even you, Mayor. And for me, as a citizen and a taxpayer, I do want to live in my home. I don't want it condemned, and I don't want it to be in a floodplain, even though I am in a low area. I think more now that I want to live next to my neighbor, that we've kind of went through kind of the same thing that everybody in this town is going to go through as we develop, that we got to start looking at the paperwork like I sent that I gave to y'all now that shows the effective date, and the city did create it. It wasn't created by the county. And that my lot that I purchased was always a buildable lot, all the way back to 1966. The date that he referenced was 1962. That would have been Bond Street up to Garth. And then the last phase would have been in 66. I've got all them documents. We did ask for the street department to give us some documents. They only gave them to us up to 04 that they could give us. The city can give any document with a little bit of research. We being citizens of this community, it is work for us to go try to retrieve them. But it is kind of hard when you get a pushback whenever you go there. I did go to Gas and Water, and I do have the plat map of the sewer from Weekly. I did ask for it a long time ago, and I did not receive it, but I had it ever since the day that I purchased that property. Artie Manning took me through a wide variety of things that I needed to do before I purchased that property. And he served our community very well when he worked at Gas and Water. He made sure when I purchased it that I did not make that mistake that most builders make when you buy an older lot. To me, there was nothing that ever represented anything in the archives or anything that this lot would ever have any potential of the flooding magnitude that the city created by 3 homes and then a 4th home that was built in a drainage easement. We can't fix that, but we need to address that. The only other way I could think of them to fix it is to buy the 4 houses and reverse it back the direction that it was at originally. I know the city's not going to do that. But I've been screaming and asking for the 18-inch pipe and an offset pipe to be set in that spot at the corner of my property. If the city doesn't mind, or even the council, I don't mind paying Bauer Construction to come over there and do it, to get an engineer involved if the city can't handle it. Thank you. That's all I got.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address the council? We're now ready for mayor and council member comments. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that we participated this past weekend in the Fright on Franklin. So first I want to extend a big thank you to the Parks and Recreation Department. You did a wonderful job on that. And I think of all the kiddos that were there and all the various costumes that I couldn't get right. They all seemed to have a really great time. Captain America Power Ranger, I couldn't tell the difference. I'll admit it publicly. But I also want to extend a thank you to my fellow council member for Ward 2 because she coordinated everything for those of us on the council that participated. We all had a really great time. She planned the theme. She helped us figure out our costumes. She did everything. So thank you for all of your hard work and bringing us together because I think we all had a big fun time together, and it wasn't just because of all the candy that we had available to eat as well.
Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make some comments about the upcoming Wreaths Across America at Riverview Cemetery. This will be the 5th year that the city has participated in Wreaths Across America at Riverview Cemetery, and the number of sponsored wreaths is down from the previous years. And so the cemetery asked me to try to help push this out. I put a flyer at everybody's desk. There's a QR code. This morning I sponsored 5 wreaths for $85. I think we're probably down to needing 139 more to get to goal. So I'm challenging, if you all have opportunity to pay $17 to sponsor 1 wreath, you can do it in somebody's name. But it would be great if every veteran's grave at the cemetery that we are responsible for has a wreath on it for Wreaths Across America. So please consider that, and that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comment from council? We are adjourned. See you next week.